Have you ever known everything was okay, but your body acted like it wasn't? Maybe your heart was racing. Maybe you couldn't relax. Maybe you felt exhausted despite doing all the right things. Most people think anxiety starts with thoughts. But what if anxiety is actually a physical experience first, and your mind is simply trying to make sense of it? Today, I'm joined by Tauna Young, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, to explore the connection between anxiety, emotions, and the nervous system. We discuss why so many people feel stuck in stress, how suppressed emotions can fuel anxiety, and a different way to think about healing and mental health. Welcome to Overcome with Travis White. Uh, Tana, I'm curious, what first led you into mental health work? And I'm curious just about the background there.
Yeah. I never had any intention of working in psychiatry, to be honest. It was not at all where I intended to end up. I fully expected to end up maybe working in an ER somewhere or urgent care when I was getting my graduate degree as a nurse practitioner. Um, but one thing I noticed when I was a nurse working in the hospital, people would be in for all kinds of things, gunshot wounds to small bowel obstructions to cellulitis, like so many different things. But there was always a mental health component to how the patient was doing that was definitely a big influencer on how well the patient was able to recover, what type of like the quality of the overall outcome. But despite the fact that it did have such a influential role, it was pretty much completely ignored from the overall treatment plan. So I remember noticing that, but also I still didn't necessarily have any intention to end up in psychiatry. When I graduated from grad school, I ended up I was going to work just 1 day a week in a mental health office. And I had both jobs lined up. I was going to work the other 3 or 4 days in a primary care office. But the mental health office was ready for me first. So I thought, okay, I'll start there because I didn't want to start two jobs at once. And then I'll start here, and then in a couple months I'll do the other thing. And I never went to the other job. I ended up going full time. Within 6 weeks, I had decided to go full time in mental health because I did not see it coming. Never saw my career in psychiatry come in. I never expected to love it so much, and it's so rewarding and so fulfilling. It seduced me. It really did. And I'm loving it so much. It's just been so rewarding and fulfilling, and I'm on my 7th year now. And like I said, I never saw it coming, and it's just been I just feel so grateful to have such a fun career.
Yes, that's really cool. It's interesting that that's wasn't your first choice, but to me, it's kind of funny how that happens. Right?
It wasn't
Like,
even on the list.
yeah. And this seems to happen a lot, though. Uh, and you focus a lot, it seems like, on anxiety in the nervous system. Uh, and I've I've read your profile stuff, and one thing that really caught my eye was you often say anxiety is more than just thoughts. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Um, Anxiety is very much physical experience. Ask anyone who has anxiety and they'll affirm that. You know, the thought actually comes after the physical experience a lot of times. The heart will start racing. A person will have the physical experience of anxiety, and then their mind writes a story about why they're anxious because the brain just wants it to make sense. Your body has some adaptive mechanisms in it to accommodate fear, danger that need to occur. Thank goodness that they're there, but they get a little out of control, a little miscalibrated sometimes. And it's meant to be an alarm system, but sometimes you've got car alarms that go off just because a butterfly lands on it, right? And or a smoke alarm that goes off just because someone is cooking a piece of toast. And that's what happens with anxiety is the nervous system is kind of that alarm system that'll go off, and then the brain just wants to make sense of it. So it'll get the feeling of stress or fear, and then it'll just write a story to explain it. I'm anxious because that. It doesn't even matter about whether it's true. It just needs to write a story. The brains are kind of funny like that.
Yeah, and that's a good way to explain it too, because it's like as a anxious person myself, I don't often always think about the physical side of it because a lot of times it's just okay. Well, there's this negative thought here. There's this negative thought here. How do I deal with that?
Mhm.
But so most of the time, I don't even pay attention to the racing heart or
Right.
that side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I saw that a lot, when I worked in primary care for a while. Working in psychiatry, people have already accepted the fact that it's a psychiatric issue that they're coming to me for. But when in primary care, I would see people, they would come in with maybe what they thought was like a cardiac condition or something. And I would ask all the questions, what makes it better or worse, all those things. And sometimes I would ask, do you have a history of anxiety by chance? And remember one woman in particular said, "Oh, no, 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 this is not mental, this is physical." And I said, "Oh, I know it is. I know it is. Anxiety is a very physical experience." And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand how physical it actually is.
Well, I completely agree. How often would you see that? Somebody coming in for the physical ailments of the anxiety.
All the time, all the time. And I think that was one of the things that stuck out to me is you can't get away from psychiatry. Like I had no intention of making psychiatry part of my practice. And the thing is you could not specialize in psychiatry and you can't get away from it because there's always the emotional toll of the physical experience. If you've got a physical illness that doesn't seem to have any type of mental health component, it's still going to have an emotional impact. And so you can't get away from it. It's something that always needs to be factored in. You really can't separate mind and body. They go hand in hand.
Yes, and I have learned that in the last probably 2 years more than I ever thought I would because I had a moment of roughness and I was never told how much the physical ailments and the mind like connect together because I feel like a lot of times the medical industry kind of treats things as a band-aid. They treat the symptoms and not the underlying issues. And so when I figured that out, that they work together, it was like a kind of like boom, like this empowers me to get the help that I need.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like sometimes my husband will think it's real funny to like startle me. And I know I'm not afraid of my husband, you know, but he can startle me and I'll jump. Like I'll have a physical response. And like the body reacts before the mind does. Cause my mind knows, oh, it's just Dave, he's just, goofing off. My body is miles ahead of that and it's responding. It's optimizing for mobilization for that fight or flight long before my brain has a chance to think it through.
So in your mind, why do so many people feel exhausted even when they're functioning well on the outside? Because it's it's kind of a uh, I guess personal question because it's like I feel like this question relates highly to me. so
Yeah.
s-
Maybe you could tell me about the lived experience and I'll explain it more from a physiological level. How about that? And my throat can recover while you do
yeah,
that.
yeah. So basically, I feel like I get these anxiety ruts. I'll call it anxiety depression ruts. And at home, I feel like everything falls apart. You know, it's dark. I'm highly irritable. I sometimes can't get things done. Um, it's I feel like I have so much going on, but then, I'm out in public or whatever, and it's like to somebody else, I look like a highly functioning adult that you'd have no idea like that I have this stuff going on internally that is stopping me from progressing in life.
But it's exhausting.
But it's totally
Say it's
exhausting.
exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Um, a lot of times your body and your brain don't really get the same message. Like we know intellectually that you're okay, but your body doesn't always get that memo. And when you've got like kind of an ongoing, like chronic stress going on, and with anxiety, the only reason it's called anxiety is because the feeling of fear doesn't fit the situation. That's the difference between anxiety and fear. The basic starting point is the same, which is fear. But with anxiety, you think it's silly, like, so you reject it. But the body doesn't know the difference between an actual threat and just a felt one, imaginary one that your mind made up because it needed to explain the feeling, right?
Hmm.
So then the brain just needs to make sense of it, and the brain will then kind of form a bias against the feeling of relaxation, because the last thing that you want to do when there's a threat is relax. And so your body, like, because your body thinks that it needs to react with the fight, the fear response, the brain doesn't make sense of it. I mean, that little battle going on can be quite exhausting. And do you find that there's maybe a little bit of masking that can be a little exhausting?
Yeah, yeah, quite a bit of the time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's tiring, you know? Yeah. I mean, think about, so like, we've seen movies, or maybe you've experienced it personally, where, say, someone dies or something, someone finds out, and a person will like throw up, or they'll faint, they'll get sick. There will be a strong physical response to an emotion. Now, in a case like that, the brain, the physical experience are in alignment, but when there isn't a logical reason to explain the feeling, that little battle going on can be incredibly exhausting for the lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the hardest part for me was actually learning that this fear that's inside me was actually very illogical, and a lot of the fear doesn't make sense. But I feel like, as living through it, if you don't admit that part and say, like, you know what, this doesn't make any sense why I'm having this fear, because it's not true. Like, it's not even close to being true. I feel like if you don't admit that, like, it's going to be hard to take the steps you need to get treatment.
Yeah. Well, and emotions, Travis, it's useful to sometimes, I think, to think of emotions as people who care about you. They always mean you well, and they're going to show up for you when they want to protect you from something. They want to drive you to do something that's important to you. They want to deepen an experience. Um, they always mean you well. And like people who care about you, if they come to you with a message that they think is incredibly important, and you ignore them or say, hey, no, no, we're not doing this, go away. They don't just go away, they come at you harder because they think that they're helping you. So if you wanted, like, if you want the recipe for anxiety, like if you wanted to cause anxiety, reject your emotions. All anxiety is rejected fear. Because, especially with fear, because fear believes that it is essential for your survival. So it doesn't just go away when you ignore it. It's going to keep coming at you, and it'll come at you and keep coming at you. And then next thing you know, you're afraid of fear before you even have it. That really, the better way to deal with it is to actually validate it, turn to it, and actually attend to it and hear its message. And if you can create a kind of an environment of social equality within you, of all the emotions, like every emotion is okay, and they can all be attended to and allowed. No one's going to get your car keys. No one gets to take over your life. But I'll literally tell people, like, hey, you're afraid of driving. Like, just say, okay, fear, here we go. It's like, here we go. Get in my purse. We're going on a road trip. Take it with you. It doesn't have to be the enemy.
And I really like that. basically you saying it's given me a different perspective on anxiety itself. You're saying it's basically suppressed emotions, and they highly contribute to that anxiety.
100%. That's all it is. It's a rejected because what's the difference, Travis? What's the difference between fear and anxiety? That's it.
Yeah, this.
Yeah, if you think that the emotion is appropriate for the situation, you call it fear.
Yep,
When you don't and you reject it, that's what makes it anxiety. That's it. That's the only difference. So there, like you can change the relationship with the emotion and actually attend to it because, the thing is if I don't even need to know a person, if you tell me what a person is afraid of, I can tell you what's important to them. Like if I'm afraid, if I say, hey, my son's out on a road trip right now and I'm worried about him, getting in an accident and dying. Well, I love my son, right? Like there's a lot that you can tell about what a person values, what's important to them when you know what they're afraid of. And, fear might be a little dramatic. It might be a little misguided and, worry about things that are situations happening that are unlikely to happen, but ultimately they're always tied to something that is actually really, really important to the person. So instead of saying, no, 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 not doing it. I hate this feeling. I can't have this feeling. I gotta overcome this feeling. Turn to the feeling, hear what it's trying to tell you. It's trying to tell you, hey, you're worried that your son's gonna die. Yeah, because you really love your son, right? Yeah, well, that makes sense. But I mean, your son, he's an adult, and he's has practice driving, and he's smart, and he has AAA, and he's got new tires on his car. We don't have any reason to think that he isn't going to be able to work through situations that happen. But yeah, I understand. Like you love your son. That's really important to you. You want to see him, right? Like if you can attend to it that way instead of like, no, no, not doing it, then it can be attended to and go on its merry way.
that's actually just how I'm being blown away is just because I've never seen it. Anxiety is like this type of way.
Hmm.
Like I've always known it's fear, but like I'm just going back to the suppressed emotions. I think it's really cool. So, kind of leads into my next question, though. Why do some people struggle to identify what they're actually feeling?
Yeah. Well, I think it's because they wouldn't allow it if they did. Like what we've been talking about. Um, I think the resistance to it creates so many problems. If we like, feelings can't be right or wrong, Travis. They can't be good or bad. There's not good ones and bad ones. They're just feelings. Only behaviors can be bad or good. They're just feelings. And you don't control your feelings. You don't. So if we could just accept ourselves and accept our feelings as they are, they're not problems to be solved. They can be interesting. Like if we can look at them with an approach of curiosity, and sometimes the feeling will just happen and it doesn't even make any sense. And it doesn't have to make sense. If we could just accept feelings as they are, which is okay, sometimes really interesting feelings come and I don't know why they do, but it doesn't have to mean anything about me. I don't have to do anything about it. It can just be interesting and I can just notice it. It doesn't have to change anything that I do, or it might. But I think a lot of the problems that occur with feelings are based on the fact that we think that feelings can be problems. They aren't.
Well said. I love it. Now, I'd love for you to, in the very beginning, we tied in mental health or anxiety with the nervous system. I'd love to touch base on that again, just because I find the concept or the whole thing behind it really, really cool.
Yeah, the nervous system is I think that it's maybe hasn't had enough of its place in the discussion about mental health and anxiety, really all mental health in general, but it's I think it's especially appropriate to talk about it in the case of anxiety. If you think about like what's actually occurring, the nervous system, I'm going to get clinical for just a second, but the nervous system, it's, nerve cells, essentially, and they're quite long. And there will be a message that goes along the nerve cell that's an electrical message. It's an electrical current. In medical, we call that an action potential, but really it's just an electrical current. So it goes across the cell. Then it needs to go from one cell to the other cell. Then it changes into a chemical message. So everyone's heard of like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, GABA, glutamate, like the different neurotransmitters. That's how the signal goes from one cell to the other. And then across the cell, it becomes an electrical current. Then it gets chemical. So it goes electrical, chemical, electrical, chemical, electrical, chemical, gets to the brain. The thalamus is the primary relay station from the brain. It's receiving that signal, and it is the one that kind of sends the message to the rest of the brain. So the thinking parts of the brain, the frontal lobe, the cortex, the higher level stuff that really only humans are doing. Like only humans are thinking about like good, bad, kind of higher level stuff. So the thalamus is what is kind of the interpreter of that. Okay. So when you've got, say, like counseling, so when the way that message gets, it's interpreted, and then it's interpreted as a fearful thing, as something that, a stressful message. And then what does your brain do? It needs to make up a story. I can always find something in my environment to blame for the feeling. And I think that the problem is the feeling, not so much that there's a miscalibration in the messaging itself, right? So, like counseling therapy, it addresses the thinking errors that occur. And then there's medications, which address that signaling from cell to cell, right? SSRIs are impacting serotonin. Okay. So the missing piece is that electrical current, it's a frequency. Okay. So this tool that we'll talk about is addressing the missing piece in the mental health discussion by recalibrating the frequency, that electrical current. And I'm sorry, Travis, I don't even remember what your original question was. I might have gone way off.
No, you're
of it.
good. You're good. Yeah, I don't even care if you do, because this is all like really interesting to me. Because
Right.
I'm, from what the sounds of it, you're getting into CS, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that.
You're good. No worries at all.
I'm a hot mess. Yeah. So cranial electrotherapy stimulation. It's just a small, tiny, small handheld device. Got a little 9-volt battery in it. Okay. So if we're talking about that electrical current, there's a frequency of calm, which is alpha waves. And those are the brain waves that are dominating whenever you're in a calm, meditative state, like the awake but relaxed state. And we talked about sometimes the nervous system, like your alarm system, is your alarm's going off even though there is no fire, right? Well, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. Top-down reasoning is what you're doing with counseling. We're finding new ways to interpret those feelings, right? Kind of rethinking it. And that's great. I always recommend counseling. There's not a person alive that I don't think would benefit from counseling. Well, this is bottom-up reasoning with CES, because we are recalibrating the frequency that comes from that electrical current. It's literally like a pacemaker for your heart. This is a pacemaker for your emotions. And so what it does, this little handheld device has a little wire, little ear clips. Okay. Doesn't matter if they go this way or that way. I don't even take off my earrings. You can go in front or behind the earrings. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now it is strategic. It is important that it's placed on the ear. There are some like vagus nerve stimulators that go on the neck, and I'm sure those have benefits, but this is not that. This is not what this is. It's strategic that it's on the ears, or like real close to the ears, because it's targeting the auricular branch of the vagus nerve, and most of this current is going straight to the thalamus. which is the interpreter of those messages. And we're giving it the current of calm, literally the current of calm. EEGs, which is imaging, it shows like what the electrical activity of the brain, what's going on at any given time. Okay. So there are two groups, EEGs, a group of people who are actively using CES and a group of people who were experienced meditators. They did EEGs on both of them. They look the same. So this puts your brain into the brain state as when it's meditating. Okay. So you turn it on. You can set it to go off automatically after 30, 45 minutes or just stay on continuous. It's just a little 9-volt battery in there. Just that little teeny tiny electrical current, it does wonders in a person's ability to feel calm.
That's really cool. And I'm trying to think of how to word it. Seems like it could help with like sleep and just overall just reduce like the amount of stress that you're feeling.
Absolutely, it does. The thalamus regulates emotional experiences. It regulates the sleep-wake cycle, arousal. So like when to get all worked up about something, so many other things. It's the primary receiver of sensory input from the rest of the body. All of that, except for the sense of smell, all goes through the thalamus. Without it, you're not going to know what to do with it without the thalamus. This recalibrates that so that a person can actually, with anxiety, there's a misalignment with intellectually what you know is happening, what you know to be true versus what you're actually feeling. Right? There's kind of a disconnect there. This brings the body into this, it kind of gives the body the memo that the brain already knows. Like your brain knows you're okay, but the body doesn't always get the memo. This gives the body the memo. It gives it the brain state of calm. And even if things were not okay, you still want to be able to show up in those moments and think rationally, right? This helps the body stay on, both feet on the ground so that you can show up and actually represent yourself and talk and advocate for yourself in a way that is in alignment with your actual values, goals, and priorities.
And I actually love that it's not medication. And I'm not saying I'm not like anti-medication. I think it has its
Neither am I.
purposes, but
Mhm.
I love seeing stuff that's not just medication.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a prescriber.
Yeah.
I prescribe medications all day long. I'm happy to do it. There's lots of, they have their uses. I'm not
Hmm.
anti-medication at all. I'm pro options.
Yes.
And this is an option that I don't know why it's not more well known based on how well it works and how long it's been around. There is no question, Travis, about whether or not this works. This has had FDA clearance since 1979. To get FDA clearance, like the amount of research and clinical, it has been clinically proven. In fact, its success rate is actually higher than SSRIs.
Oh, for real.
Yeah,
And
it
for
actually
some
is.
reason, it doesn't shock me though. Like and it's only because of what I've heard about SSRIs. I haven't experienced with them myself, but
Yeah. So SSRIs, okay, so what the threshold is in studies, in order for it to be considered successful, it has to give at least 50% or more improvement, okay, to the symptoms. So with that metric being used on both of them, SSRIs has a 45 to 55% success rate, okay? CES, using that same standard, has a 67% success rate. But, Travis, no one is gaining weight from CES. No one's having sexual side effects. No one's overdosing. No one's allergic, right? So when you factor in the differences in the safety profile, they don't even belong in the same conversation. My 3-year-old grandson has autism. He doesn't speak. And he doesn't, he has issues with anything being on his head too, is the funny part. So CES, it clips on your ears, so it goes on your head, right? But with autism and with anxiety and other things, people are sometimes they're just kind of buzzing, There's just loud. It's loud in their head. And my grandson, even though he doesn't speak, he asks for it because they can clip it on his ears and turn it on, and he can feel calm that he doesn't feel any other way.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's gone kind of back to SSRIs here. I've had some people come on the show and just say like the horrible side effects that they have, and that's like it's like you said, though, medication has its purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's always part of the conversation. I prescribe. Like I said, I'm happy to prescribe. But one of the things I'm always talking to 'em about is the side effects. It's like, okay, it's working well for you, but let's talk about the side effects. Sometimes they have a problem with their sexual functioning, or they'll gain weight, or they'll have, gastrointestinal things and different things like that. And there's always a potential for adverse events too. Um, we don't even need to have that conversation with CES. Part of having FDA clearance is that you need to have a solid adverse event reporting system in place. Okay, I don't think there's any antidepressant that hasn't had any adverse events. I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure, right? With CES, doesn't matter which of the brands that we're talking about that have FDA clearance, there has never been an adverse event reported ever from any of the brands, and it's had clearance since 1979.
That's cool. And I've been on like some very low key, like simple anti anxiety medicine, and I have side effects from them.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, people will sometimes have side effects if they go into it too fast, to
Yeah.
kind of want to ease them in, start with a quarter pill or even half pill,
Hmm.
it's into it. We'll see as I guess, in less than 1% of people, less than 1%, they may have just a little bit of like dizziness. Um, and then those people will maybe ease into it a little bit. But like I said, it's less than 1%. But like no one's actually being harmed by that. You can't hurt yourself with CES. So like my 3-year-old grandson, they don't have to sit and, watch him to make sure that he doesn't hurt himself with it. My 101-year-old grandma uses it too. She has dementia and she gets kind of stressed sometimes. They'll put this on her, it'll chill her out. Now I'm talking about people in my family, people that I know, but like I see 20, 25 patients every day. And I see right in front of me every day what it does for my patients. And just as a whole, my patients are just a less anxious bunch than they were before I knew about this.
It's really cool. And I'm already like looking at your website and pulling up the device and looking into it. I could just see a lot of benefits from my side of things and my wife's side of things.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, you have a new baby, right?
Hmm.
Um, Pregnant women use it, like you could, there's children could use it, Now it hasn't been studied. It hasn't. I do ask people, are you pregnant, and those things. Do you have a seizure disorder? Do you have a pacemaker? Those things. But that doesn't mean that they can't use it. It's just the studies have been limited.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like they'd rather not medicate their child if they can avoid it. So to have a drug-free option that literally anyone can use, it needs to be part of the regular mental health toolkit because it has earned its place there. There's no question about whether or not this works. Like with pacemakers, there's no question about whether or not pacemakers work. Now, not everybody needs a pacemaker, but they work. This works. That's not in question. That's been clinically proven to work.
And
Not everyone has anxiety, but a lot of people do.
well, and I could see honestly other benefits to this than just the even if it's just feeling stressed out at the end of the day, just to go throw
Totally.
it on your ear and just I am totally in love with like just different options.
Hmm. Yeah, me too. Because I think people want I think a lot of people are like, okay, meds, great, but I think they want to know what. There's got to be something else. Is there more? Well, yeah, there is. There is, and this is one of those things. And this is addressing it in the area that nothing else is. It's kind of the missing component.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if it's okay, I'm gonna tell a personal story really quick.
Yeah, please.
So I have a seizure disorder, and it started back in 2009. And for the longest time, it was like, I went to doctors, did all the testing. It was like, here's a pill, here's a pill. I had tons of side effects of those pills. I ended up
Uh-huh.
tapering myself off because I was like, I would rather have a seizure than deal with like one of them I was hallucinating on and like
Wow.
couldn't even keep track
Wow.
of time. And so, long story short, the seizures died down to like one per year. And then in 2024, I had a cluster of seizures again. And uh, that was the first time that I was actually went to a doctor that gave me options. I said, you know what, you could take medicine or you can't. You can even just change your diet and see if that helps. And I was like, nobody's
Yeah.
ever told me that before because they've just all been
Yeah.
about medication. So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
good
glad
to
you
have
shared that.
options. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like give people the options, tell them the benefits and risks, and let them make their decisions. But, a lot of times, as a medical professionals, a medical professional will just go straight to limited options. They'll go straight to the medications, and that's all nice and good. But maybe they want to know what else there is, and they don't even know that there are other options. So I appreciate that you shared that story. Yeah. What'd you decide?
I actually changed my diet and then I got diagnosed with a different type of seizure. So before it was minor epilepsy. Now it's called PNES. It's psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. So the anti-seizure medication doesn't even help.
Right. Yeah. So for you, there's definitely an emotional component,
Hmm.
like a stress management
Yeah.
component. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I see that a lot in psychiatry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And has it been under control since you've
Since I changed my diet and started therapy and stuff, I have been seizure free for over, let's see, since probably November of 2024.
that's great. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mm, And while we were talking about this, I want to kind of go backwards here, go back to the nervous system because I just thought of something. When you were explaining the nervous system, it makes sense to me now why, like, so many things in modern life are causing dysregulation in the nervous system. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Cause the body can be quite reactive, like the meanings that we put on things, we don't question those enough. And your brain, it adapts through something called salience. Okay, salience is like the amount of like novelty that something has. Like for example, if you imagine looking at like a really busy street in New York. Okay, you just see all these people, and you don't really notice any one person. But if someone's dressed like a clown, you're going to notice them. Okay, now that your brain is trained to like notice something different, and even like if you think about food, your brain kind of gets trained to like notice, ooh, that one's like candy, that one's sweet, no? And those meanings that we put on it, like the value based meaning, like candy versus broccoli, right? We don't question those meanings enough, and understand that sometimes we need to re-educate the salience, the meanings that we put on things, because your body will it'll just react to situations like maybe someone, gives just makes a certain type of face, and your brain sees it as it's though they're judging me for something, and then your body will overreact. It'll react. It'll respond to. It'll give the danger response, and that person, maybe their shoes are too tight, and they were thinking about it when they were looking in your general direction. But your brain just writes that story, and it's having its own experience, and this other person doesn't even know that they were involved in that experience. They're not thinking about you at all. They're thinking about their shoes.
Yeah, and I actually heard I can't remember the exact statistic on it, but it was like oftentimes we think that people are thinking of us. And what was it? It was pretty high. It was like 97% of the time they're not. Like
They're not thinking
it's
about you at all.
rarely thinking about you.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Yeah, and, so like, I'm gonna see you, meaning, like, kind of, a person will see another person through their own kind of, self-focused lens. Like, I might be thinking about, that I don't look good in these pants, and then I see you, and you're thinking about you're not sure if you can pay your rent, and you look in my general direction at the same time you're thinking that, and at the same time I'm thinking about my pants, and I assume that you've noticed my pants, you know? And then, it just affirms, I look ridiculous, everybody's noticing me. You're not thinking about me, nothing about me. You've got your own problems, right? And that's just what we don't even realize how much we're doing that. And we think, oh yeah, no, no, yep, these do look ridiculous. Travis noticed, and you didn't know you had anything to do with that,
hey,
Yeah, we don't question those stories enough.
well, I remember years ago, I was at a restaurant. I was standing in line, and I don't remember what I was thinking at all, but I was remember kind of being focused in this guy's general direction. So he probably thought I was staring at him, and he actually turned around and said, "What are you staring at? Do you want to fight?" And I was like, "I wasn't even like looking at you, like maybe through you, but my thoughts had nothing to do with you."
Yep, yep. Yeah, and for a men in particular, I've heard that a lot for men. Like they'll go to the grocery store, another man looks in their direction, and the next thing you know, the fight's on. Like because that's what that means.
Hmm.
And and well, that's actually like projecting. Like what I said before about the pants and stuff.
Hmm.
We don't realize how much we actually project onto another person, and then like I said, the kind of the missing component from that conversation is the physical experience because your body is ready to go. Because your body it's supposed to like prioritize mobilization, the need to fight, to flight, to run, because that's how, you can save your own life to run away. And so all of the physiological changes that occur when it's got that fear response are meant to prioritize mobilization. So, like the heart rate will change, the blood pressure will change, um, your breathing will change. And that's useful. It's adaptive in some situations, but it gets really out of hand and it's maladaptive in many situations, and it can actually cause problems that aren't even there.
This is all really interesting, and I do have one more question here
Yeah,
about the nervous system.
yeah.
With where I feel like we're with technology and social media, we're in a constant state of stimulation. How do those type of things affect the nervous system?
Yeah. I think resting is a skill, and maybe we don't prioritize that enough or understand the value of that enough. The need to rest, and kind of like the default mode network, if we call it that, of the brain. It's like kind of the screensaver setting, of your computer or your TV. It's really an important practice for our brains. It's really an important thing for our brains to be able to do that, to process, to remember, to think creatively, like daydreaming, we'll call that kind of the default mode. And a brain that's just buzzing, that's just too busy. Um, that relaxed state is something that can actually start to feel uncomfortable. Person will actually can actually feel uncomfortable in what really should be the default state. Gas pedal mode is the only thing they know. They don't know how to idle. And when you're, using social media and video games and different things, and those can be fun. That you're not in that state. You're not in that relaxed state. It might be relaxing. It might feel like it's a restful activity, but it's not the same thing. And that is a very important activity for our brains to be able to do that.
I totally agree. My wife's always telling me, "You need to turn off your phone. You need to turn it off. It's late. You need to turn it off." And most of the time, I'm just looking at garbage. Like, I don't even need it in my hands,
Yeah. Yeah. Like how would your car run if it was only ever in gas pedal mode and it never got to idle?
right?
And a lot of us are doing that to our brains and bodies, and we don't realize it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's and I feel like the whole like generation growing up now is it's just technology overload. So I'm glad that I'm part of that generation that got to see kind of both sides of it. I feel like the generation that's growing up now, it's like it's technology overload. And so I'm just happy that I got to experience both sides of it. Like I grew up in a time where technology wasn't like dominating everything. And it's like the older I get now, it's like it's just everywhere.
Yeah. Um, in general, I think that people don't really realize the importance of just rest,
Hmm.
and a lot of brains don't know how to do it. Excuse me, Travis. Sorry about that. Like relaxation will be its own threat. And that miscalibration to see the change with CES that it can do to like retrain the brain to do that can be very beautiful and amazing, impactful. But what I've seen with PTSD in particular is a lot of times those people do need to kind of ease into it because they learn that you can't trust relaxation. You're not safe if you relax. Never relax because you're in danger if you are. So they have to like kind of be eased into that experience because it can actually be scary for them. And I've seen people like just sob and find that it's like it can just be a very emotional, very scary experience. And sometimes they can only tolerate it for like 30 seconds. You have to ease into it.
Yeah, it's like they're coming so accustomed to the stress and everything that's going on that the calmness feels uncomfortable.
Yep. Yep. Like beyond uncomfortable, like they are in danger if they relax.
That's so crazy to me. S-
Hmm.
So now, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here just because
Okay.
I feel like there's so many interesting sides. So somebody that may be skeptical of CES, what would you say to change their mind?
Well, I don't blame him for being skeptical, for starters. I was skeptical too, because I thought, why would I know about it if it's that great? I mean, like I'm part of the psychiatric community. Why wouldn't I know about it? And I still don't know the answer to that question. So, like to try it is to know. So I'd say try it, get one. If I'm wrong, return it. Return it within 30 days. I don't want people like if it's not going to help, give it back. Like someone else will want it. I don't get returns, Travis. I tell people like, hey, if I'm wrong, return it within 30 days. Very, very rarely do people return it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great answer because it's like, just try it. Like, I'm
No.
giving you some other option. Like,
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'm not trying to convince
yeah,
it. Like, I'm just. My goal is to like. Really confused. I do not understand why it's not more well known and not more utilized, especially in the psychiatric community. Because I didn't know about it. I'd been practicing for almost 6 years before I learned about it, and that kind of ticks me off. Like I've helped thousands of people with anxiety, insomnia, depression, pain, PTSD, all these things that it helps with. And there was an option that I could have given, Travis, like you mentioned that provider that gave you those options. I like to give people options. There was a whole other option that I didn't know about. And not only that, Travis, but when I was, when my kids were little, I had a daughter who was so anxious at night. Oh my goodness. Nights were so stressful for her and for me. Now she's 29 now. She loves this device. It chills her right out. I could have given that to her when she was 8, you know? Like when she was really having a hard time at nights is when she was about 8. This was available then, and I didn't know. I could have put that on her, and nights could have been better for her and for me. And like to see it in action, I get to see it in action all day, every day. If I don't think I would believe it if I didn't see it. It sounds like pseudoscience almost. Like I get that. I understand. I probably sound crazy. That's okay. Don't believe me. Try it. If I'm wrong, return it.
And here I am. Uh, I've actually, my family's gone more of like the functional medicine way of things. So I don't think it sounds like crazy at all. I think it sounds like, we do the whole, um, when my wife starts getting a cold or something, she does an infrared nose thing,
Yeah.
and
Does that help?
oh yeah, for her it works wonders. Like
How about that? Yeah. I actually tone myself down when I'm talking about it because the list of things that it helps with, if I know that if I really tell everything it helps with, I'm going to sound crazy. It's going to sound like witchcraft, or like people who take natural medicine a little too far. But it helps with headaches. My colleague Tyson, a couple weeks ago, I saw him wearing his in the middle of the day one time, and he's like, "Yeah, I put this on it because I have a headache. Anytime I start having a headache, I put it on, and it takes my headache away. It helps people with Lyme disease, pain, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, depression, anxiety. All of those things too that we've talked about. But it helps with just these random things too, just that you would never expect, because all of those are like a nervous system experience, right?
hmm
Like there's and also like when you think about, well, I don't want somebody shocking my brain. Well, I get that too. But Travis, let's not make any mistake. You have electrical current going through your
hmm
body.
all the time.
Like you'd be dead without it.
Yeah.
Your heart can't beat without it. Your nervous system is sending electrical signals whether you want it to or not. So like all we're it's the same amplitude that's already going on, if anything less. It's just changing the frequency to a frequency of calm. That's it. That's it.
But kind of just have basically two questions here, and then a couple follow-ups that I always do. What would you say is the difference between coping and healing?
It's a really good question. Coping and healing. Yeah. I think with healing, you get to the place of acceptance. You know, I think healing is when you accept the fact that that it did. That's what happened. That's how it is. You know, and coping is when you're getting to that place. It's when you're getting to that point. Like this is an outcome. This is a situation that I didn't prefer. I'm working on accepting it. Okay. Healing is what happens once you accept it. A lot of times we think that um, something bad happened. And the only problem with that is the thought that you thought it was a problem. Like you remember that show Gilligan's Island?
hmm
Um, I said, they left for a 3-hour tour, and then they thought that like something that wasn't supposed to happened, which is they shipwrecked on an island, and we think that there was a problem, but really, what happened was, oh, it turns out I thought that I was supposed to go from this place to that place, but it turns out I was actually supposed to be on this island, right? And when you realize that, that's when you heal.
Absolutely love it. And the last thing here, and then just a few follow-ups, is what gives you hope about the future of mental health care?
You know, I know people love to like rag on millennials. Um, and that's okay. That's okay. Go for it if you want. But like one thing they are doing well is they are acknowledging mental health more than my generation did. Um, and they're a little kinder, you know? My generation was more like you just push through it. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, there really is. But sometimes we did that by um pretending like feelings don't matter. Like you can do both. You can push through and you can acknowledge feelings. And I think that the up and comings are actually doing better at acknowledging feelings and not only acknowledging their own feelings, but allowing other people to have feelings too. And just the fact that conversations like this are happening gives me hope for the future because they weren't happening, 20 years ago in the way that they are now. They were happening with a lot less bias. They are a lot more normalized now. You know, the masculinization, like the fact that you're a man and you're talking about feelings and you're talking publicly about anxiety that you've experienced, um, is something that a lot of men, haven't done historically. And just the fact that people are talking about it more and normalizing it is something that the value of that really cannot be overstated.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I just go back to it's hard to be vulnerable. I had to a lot of times I have to talk myself into saying something, but then I always think, okay, well, if I don't say it and leave it unsaid, like maybe that episode won't hit that person. Like, and
Yeah,
it's just that it's
yeah.
always about that one person to me.
Well, something, Travis, that I remember is that your fears and your passions live in the same place. Like if this was a podcast about basket weaving, you wouldn't have any fears associated with it because it's not something you're passionate about, you know? Um, and so whenever there's something that's important to you, you're gonna have some fears associated with it. So for me, I've learned to interpret my fears differently. I know that if my life doesn't scare me, probably isn't interesting. It's probably boring me, you know? So just changing the I guess, the relationship with the emotions can go a long way. And I knew an author that he said that if when he wrote something, if if before he released it, he didn't start to feel afraid about what people would think about it, he didn't release it because he knew that if he didn't feel that feeling, then it probably wasn't something he was passionate about and it probably wasn't his best work. So he learned to value that feeling.
That's crazy that you said that because I've had to do a few solo episodes. The majority of this podcast has been interviews, and I don't love solo episodes. I love the people sharing their story. Not that it's not important for me to share pieces of me too, but I was trying to do one like 2 weeks ago, and I just didn't feel anything with it. Like I couldn't even release it. Like I recorded it like several times, and I was like, I don't feel like this will even hit. There's something about it, so I just ended up not doing one. It's kind of like the same reason what you were just saying. So but I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned to actually like, the fearful feeling. There's something about it that's unpleasant, but we a lot of times we take that feeling and we think that it's something that we're supposed to avoid. I say, why don't you try the opposite? Maybe maybe that's a signal that that is something that's really important to you, and maybe that's where your mission is. So maybe you should be heading directly into the fears.
Yeah, makes sense. S- few things here now, just kind of maintenance items. This is kind of a generalized question, but I like to hear the responses that I get. What do you feel is the biggest stigma when it comes to mental health?
Biggest stigma. That's a to think about that. I think that a lot of people are very willing to make room for someone else's mental health concerns, but not necessarily their own. But then also I think that goes both ways, that I think that a lot of times people think that their own experience is unique and that other people aren't also just having the exact same experience. Like, we all know what it's like to feel anxious. We all know what it's like to feel insecure or embarrassed. Um, we're probably all, I think we are more alike than we realize. Um, I don't know if that's the biggest stigma. I'd have to think about what is the biggest stigma. I think there's a lot of stigmas about it, and one of them is that mind and body, maybe that they are separate. People realize how much of a physical experience it is. Um, I mean, working in psychiatry, it's like it's really hard to just narrow down to just one because
So
I see
much of
so
it,
many
yeah.
different perspectives, so many different perspectives. Yeah, I think the biggest problem with that comes up with feelings is thinking that you have a problem. Feelings are not problems to be solved. You can just leave them, just accept them as they are.
And sometimes that's a hard thing to do. A lot of times it's very hard to do.
Yeah, yeah,
So, two more here. Where can people find you and your product?
yeah. Well, you can go to, www.neurovana.com. So Neurovana calm, CALM.com. I'm on Instagram, Tauna Young, FNP-C, LinkedIn, Tauna Young, and then also Neurovana, LinkedIn. Not hard to find. And then, of course, I own my own mental health practice in Boise, Idaho, Harmony Mental Health. I'm pretty easy to find online. If you know how to spell my name, Tauna Young.
Perfect. And the last thing here is I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Is there anything you'd like to bring up that we did not discuss?
Um, Let me think about that. Anything? I think people need to know about CES. You know, um, if you don't need it, then you know someone who does. And the difference that I've seen it make in people's lives, I just can't stress it enough. When I talk to other clinicians, other providers about it, people are like they're just like speechless. It doesn't make sense that it isn't more well known. Um, if you're thinking you need it, you probably do. If you're thinking your friend needs it, they probably do because it's so impactful, so helpful.
So, well, Tana, thank you so much for coming on, especially since you've been sick and coughing. I appreciate you taking the time and
So
getting through
yeah,
this with me.
yeah. Thanks for being patient with me when I had to take my little coughing breaks.
No worries at all. I understand how it goes. And I really admire the work you're doing and how you're pushing this product and giving people different options because that's an important
Thank you.
piece.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having these conversations and for inviting me on.
And thank you to all the listeners. If this episode resonated with you, please share it and follow us. Thanks again. Until next time.